Hey guys, what is up? I am here to give you guys my final recap and my final thoughts on Fate Grand Order Absolute Demonic from Babylonia, which is on the final episode of episode 21 out of 21, which I'm pretty sure you guys know the obvious. And of course, yeah, give my final thoughts and the way how it went. So if anything else, let's just get this started. We have to it that there's a narration played at the very beginning of this episode, and later on we see Fujimura along with Mash having a wake up, and they end up being greeted by Quetzalcoatl and Jaguar Man. We see to it that they end up having to explore around the area and see if they can find any of their companions along the way. Of course, if they ask Dr. Romani if they are around, but unfortunately they're not, you know? And we see to it that they continue to walk on top of the walls, etc. And we see to it that eventually that they're gonna go to Uruk. Well, Fujimaru and Mash was gonna go to Uruk along with Fu, but unfortunately for Quetzalcoatl and Jaguar Man, they're unable to go with them since their job is done here and there. They're about to say their goodbyes to Fujimaru, and Fujimaru makes a couple parting nice words with Quetzalcoatl, realizing that she really loves humans, because she wasn't lying about what she was going to do, etc. Even though she would really want to destroy Uruk, all out together. Not to mention, we get to also see another part of her mission that she wants to stop Gorgon from becoming the title Tiamat, that kind of thing. Which is something that was very sweet and kind of strange at the same time. Eventually, Quetzalcoatl and Jaguar Man will later on disappear after making a couple nice parting words, and Quetzalcoatl giving Fujimaru a big hug, sister hug. I'm like, oh, isn't that sweet, that kind of thing. Eventually, they end up going to Uruk and gets greeted by Ishtar and Merlin, We see to it that we get to know that Ereshkigal is resting in the underworld, and everything else seems to be all crazy. As for Merlin, he ends up having to exchange a couple of words, and even though there was some funny moments about Quetzalcoatl wanting to give you some joint locks here and there, funny stuff here and there, But aside from that, we continue on to see the scene with Ishtar, Merlin, Fujimaru, and Mash, to see to it that, that Merlin and Romani end up exchanging a couple nice, funny insults because you know how they are. And I'm thinking in my mind, yeah, but Merlin, on the other hand, decides to help Fujimaru out because he's a big fan of his, Even though there are some things he doesn't like about humans or something, he does enjoy Fujimaru's story that he's been writing a lot. Even though we see to it that he always tries to make an ending that's very satisfying for everybody, all together. And later on, he will later go back to Avalon, which is what he can only do, watch far away from above with his own eyes. And he will later on give Fujimaru a parting gift of a flower, which may not seem a lot, but it actually gives a lot of symbolism, the way I look at it. I mean, I don't know what kind of symbolism I'm talking about, but one thing for sure, I guess that flower just means a lot of purity, I guess, but I guess that's just me. Maybe. Sorry for talking nonsense, which I always do most of the time throughout my videos anyway, but let's continue on. Eventually, they will later visit Gilgamesh at his throne, which I should have said that later, but we get to see a little flashback about Gilgamesh and Enkidu, talking to each other, and Gilgamesh, this was back then when Gilgamesh was at his major prime and he was still a tyrannical, ruler. Let's not forget about that. We all know Gilgamesh is a major boss, and his personality is nasty as it is. But let's not also forget that I think he was a good ruler to a point to make a future for mankind. I believe when he had a talk with Enkidu in this flashback or in a dreamlike state that Gilgamesh was in, we see to it that Enkidu does ask Gilgamesh, why can't you just tell that to your own people, I mean, if you don't tell anyone else, no one's going to understand you entirely. And Gilgamesh tells Enkidu, this is not some kind of story that could be told to the populace. I'm telling this to someone who could actually listen to my story, and you're the one listening. Eventually, Enkidu's like, I'm just only a tool or something, What's the deal? And Gilgamesh is like, no, Enkidu, let me teach you something. A person that lives together, fights together, that is not a human or a tool. That is, and then it gets cut off with Gilgamesh waking up, being greeted by Fujimura, and we see to it that they end up having to talk a couple of minutes before his time will soon be up, and etc. We see to it that that Gilgamesh, on the other hand, will later on have a talk with Fujimura at a certain place on top of his castle, Eventually, Fujimura decides to put the flower that Merlin gave him onto a stone, somewhat of a place of where the stone is at. And even so, we see to it that Gilgamesh tells Fujimura that he's very brazen to do that, And when I decided to look up that word, because the way how Ishtar reacted was kind of in a negative stance of what he just said, And I decided to look up the word brazen, and it looks like to me, without shame, or you have a lot of guts to do what you did, And we see to it that Gilgamesh says that this is a fact of what Fujimura did, He can understand why Fujimura did, but it's not something to laugh at either. He decides to actually tell him a story implicitly. And let's not forget that the way how this went, this is actually his story, but he's not telling who it is explicitly, so he's telling them implicitly. You guys get the idea. Sorry for being a little confusing, but he decides to tell a story to Fujimura about a man, Although, he didn't tell the full details about after he lost someone or he was in the underworld because, he lost a friend, and we all know who that person is. Let's not forget that. He later on tries to overcome this death thing and decides to go on a journey that was longer than his lifespan, longer than what he could expected. He finds satisfaction and great gratitude that he did this kind of journey, As the episode continues on with the story that Gilgamesh was telling Fujimura implicitly, he will later on achieve what he's been looking for, some kind of herb of immortality, but all of a sudden it will later on be snatched out of his hands. And by that time, he realizes that this man finally understood the meaning of life. He never had any anger, he never had any sadness, but he was just laughing so hard because he finally understood what human life is really like, It took his entire life to obtain it, and then he lost it. He therefore tells Fujimura to live on and keep fighting, Even though some people does not acknowledge you, I will be the one to acknowledge you. That kind of thing. And we see to it that before they leave, he decides to give him a little small parting gift, which is ironically the Holy Grail, but he was going to give him a drink at the same time, but there were too underage to drink, which is why I go that's funny, Funny stuff, right? Pretty cool here and there. But eventually he does ask one question to Fujimura, what did you think of Uruk before they get teleported back, And Fujimura and Mash replies that it was really fun, and they end up disappearing or teleported back. As for Ishtar, she did say that she's gonna stay around the Babylonia era until the end of time, until it's up, Since she's got 25% of the gems, or 20% or 25% of the gems of the treasury from Gilgamesh in his storeroom, endless bottomless storeroom, if I remember correctly. She decides to stay around and fly away, and we get to see. And after Fujimura and Mash teleports back to Chaldea, we see Ishtar flying away in her favorite floating gear, and we also see someone in some cloaked clothing. When Ishtar is flying away, which this has to be. We all know who that is, obviously from the get-go, because the clothing and everything else. Yeah, if I had to say explicitly and give you the details of that person in that clothing when Ishtar flew away, that has to be the old man on the mountain, or first Hassan, or Gramps. But we also see to it that the survivors of Uruk are deciding to make the journey somewhere else. Eventually, a boy will later on see a person disintegrating or dissipating into light and disappear in thin air. At first, I thought it was Ishtar, but after rewatching the scene again and looking at it closely and pausing at a certain point, it was actually Gilgamesh looking at the remaining of his people leaving and to find another place to live, or to find another place that's called home. Which I go yeah, that was kind of emotional right there, but all goodbyes had to come and go here and there. Eventually, though, after the post-credit scene, there's a post-credit scene, by the way, and a big announcement, which I'm going to be talking about. We see that MASH and Fujimura will later on be informed that the final singularity is upon them, and that the Solomon singularity is right there. And we get a major big announcement from a source from my friend in Twitter, and now I find another source, which is in Anime News Network, that Fate Grand Order is actually gonna get another anime involving the Grand Temple of Time Solomon. Yes, you heard me correct. Pretty much like Fate Grand Order is getting another anime involving Grand Time Solomon, which is the final singularity that I'm pretty sure all you guys who plays Fate Grand Order and finishes up to the campaign, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I mean, the announcement was given by my friends and then some other sources, and the one source I told you about. The journey's not over yet, boys and girls and Masters of Chaldea. There's another anime coming up which is called Fate Grand Order Final Singularity, the Grand Temple of Time Solomon. So pretty much get ready for your seatbelts here and there, etc. Now I can finally give you guys my final thoughts on the series in general. This series was actually pretty fun. I mean, I know there was a lot of dialogue that was in the game that should have been incorporated into the anime, and I think the series should have been a little bit longer. Let's not forget that when it comes to certain series, sometimes they try to get the point across really quickly when it comes to adapting a video game or a game from video game to an anime, and it takes a while. And not to mention, they don't have a lot of episodes, and it could ruin the entire franchise for everybody in general if it's not done correctly. Now, I think that adaptation did a nice job, you know. I mean, it wasn't perfect and all, and even though, there should have been some important dialogue in the game that should have been incorporated into the anime, I still think it still did a nice job in terms of, certain action and maybe, along with music and some nice scenes that may not be very interesting for anyone else altogether. But I still enjoyed it to the very end of it. I mean, a lot of people love the Babylonia singularity, and I could see why a lot of fans out there are not very satisfied. Even for me, I know I could get irritated with some scenes here and there and not be very happy with what they did, especially with the Tiamat CG animation. And a lot of people didn't really like that, and I can understand why. I think if they had stuck with the original 2D animation, I think it would have looked a lot better. But, it is what it is. But let's not forget, even though Babylonia was really nice and all, I know a lot of people are not enjoying it. For me, it was pretty fun in terms of adaptation and everything. I think they could have done a little bit better, And yeah, like I said, I still had a lot of fun. So what's my overall score? I say it's around a 6 to a 7 out of 10 for me. Well, I put it at 6 out of 10, not to try to overhype it, but it was still a nice adaptation here and there. Nice to see Gilgamesh in action, and yeah, see MASH, Ishtar, and other written faces. Let's not forget about that, okay? And then Gramps and Merlin and Enkidu and Babylonia in general. Pretty fun. But let's not also forget that since we get an announcement that there's another anime coming up, which is also called Fate Grand Order Final Singularity, the Grand Temple of Time Solomon, let's not forget that there's also the Camelot movies for Fate Grand Order, which I was given and shown pictures of a lot of things for that movie. And I look forward to that one. Hopefully it'll be released theatrically throughout the USA, hopefully. And yeah, looking forward to it. There's about 2 parts of it, if I remember correctly, and I hope it does a good job. And guarantee, I think it will do a good job if they do this right. Anyways, that's about it, people. I hope those of you guys who watched the series from the beginning to the end, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And those of you guys who are Masters of Chaldea that played the game, I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Had a lot of fun with it, even though it could have been a little bit better here and there. I still enjoyed it to the very end of part of it. But, like I said, the journey's not over yet. We still got the Camelot movies, and we got the greenlit anime for Fate Grand Order Final Singularity, the Grand Temple of Time Solomon. So, the journey's not over yet, boys. I hope, boys and girls, those of you guys, like I said, and repeating myself all the time, again and again in most of my videos, I hope you guys enjoyed the anime as much as I did, and looking forward to seeing what the other is going to be given. So until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm Alpha Zetto. Have a good day, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, peace out. Bye bye. Toot toot.